There is a moment in every powerful man's life where something inside him dies and something else is born. It is the moment he stops expecting the world to care. He stops looking for sympathy. He stops waiting for someone to understand his pain, to validate his struggle, to reward his virtue. In that moment, he sees the world as it truly is, indifferent, brutal, self-serving. And instead of falling into despair, he becomes untouchable. Because once you accept that no one cares, you are free. Free to move without seeking approval. Free to act without begging for praise. Free to suffer without resentment. And that is when everything begins to change. Machiavelli did not believe in fairness. He believed in reality. And reality is that people care when it benefits them to care. When your pain becomes their opportunity, when your success becomes their ladder, when your failure becomes their entertainment. But they do not care for you. Not truly, not deeply. And if you build your life expecting them to, you are constructing a palace on a sinkhole. It will collapse. And when it does, they will walk past your ruins without slowing down. The faster you accept this, the sooner you begin to build something indestructible, a life that is not dependent on being cared for, but on being feared, respected, or necessary. It sounds cold, but it is not cruelty. It is clarity. The belief that people should care about you just because you suffer is a child's fantasy. Power begins when you bury that fantasy. When you realize that your pain is yours to carry and no one is coming to lift it from your shoulders. When you stop asking, why is no one helping me, and start asking, what can I build from this silence? In that shift, your posture changes. You stop broadcasting your wounds. You start becoming the kind of man whose silence makes others nervous. And that silence, that refusal to beg for care, becomes a fortress. This is the foundation of Stoic power: to suffer without theatrics, to endure without applause, to bleed without an audience. Most people, even the so-called strong, are addicted to emotional performance. They dress their pain in poetry. They hint, they complain, they seek pity, disguised as honesty. But the Machiavellian mind knows that every display of suffering is a transaction. And when you keep doing it, people begin to see you as cheap. Every time you show your wound, you lower your value. People stop seeing strength. They see someone trying to be seen. And the moment that becomes obvious, you are finished. This is not to say you must feel nothing. It is to say that you must reveal nothing unless it serves your strategy. The world rewards strength, not need. And the fastest way to become strong is to act as though no one cares, even if part of you still hopes they might. Because when you act like no one cares, you stop waiting. You stop delaying your evolution. You stop leaning on invisible support and start training your mind to walk through fire alone. That kind of man doesn't need applause. He doesn't need pity. He doesn't even need recognition. He becomes a force, and people feel that force the moment he enters a room. This is where power becomes magnetic. Ironically, when you stop caring whether people care about you, they start to notice you. When you stop trying to be understood, you become intriguing. When you stop begging for loyalty, people chase your approval. Because indifference, real, earned, grounded indifference, is rare. Most men pretend not to care, but underneath they're seething. The Machiavellian man genuinely doesn't care, not because he's broken, but because he understands how the game works. And everyone else, still, hoping to be loved for free, feels that difference. It unsettles them. And what unsettles others commands them. Think of how many people operate. They shape their identity around being liked. They say what sounds good. They post their struggles in hopes someone will comment, "You're strong." They share quotes about resilience but melt under pressure. They want the appearance of toughness, but the safety of sympathy. That's not strength, that's decoration. True resilience is invisible. It is the man who walks past you with heavy scars and no need to explain them. It is the man who doesn't share his pain because his pain is his weapon. That is the man people begin to fear, then follow. Machiavelli would say, Stop advertising your hardship. Use it. Every time you're tempted to complain, pause and remember, no one cares. Not deeply, not consistently. And that is not AA. Tragedy. It is liberation. Because once you accept this, you begin to move differently. You stop over-explaining. You stop trying to justify your existence. You stop asking for forgiveness simply for being ambitious, aggressive, or unapologetically focused. You realize that caring too much about being cared for is the softest form of slavery, and freedom begins when you let it go. Here is where the Stoic merges with the strategist. When no one cares, your losses become private, your growth becomes secret, your ambition becomes surgical. You build in silence, you endure in silence, and then one day you emerge, and no one knows how you got there. Because while they were watching the loud and needy crumble under the weight of ignored expectations, you were becoming a ghost that moves through fire untouched. You didn't need applause. You didn't need pity. You didn't even need company. You needed the silence because the silence taught you the truth. Power belongs to the man who doesn't beg for care. But this shift is not easy. You will be tempted to reach out, to explain, to seek connection. You will have moments of doubt, moments where your silence feels like suffocation. Good. That means the old part of you is dying. Let it die. Let the part of you that needs to be seen wither. Let the part that rages when ignored fall silent. Because underneath that noise is something terrifyingly powerful. The man who moves for himself. The man who rises. Not because someone lifted him, but because he dragged himself up by sheer force of will. That is the man people. Remember, not the one who cried the loudest, the one who didn't flinch. You. See, the world doesn't care about your suffering, but it will care about what you become because of it. If you use that truth as a reason to collapse, you will become just another echo in a crowd of complaints. But if you use it as a reason to harden, to sharpen, to rise in silence, then you become the kind of figure Machiavelli admired, untouchable, unpredictable, and unforgettable. And here's the paradox. When you no longer seek care, when you stop needing to be understood or helped or held, you gain influence. People want to be near you. They sense something they don't have. Internal authority. The quietness of a man who is not waiting for the world to catch up. The stability of someone who has already buried his need for sympathy. That kind of presence changes rooms. It shifts dynamics. It makes the weak imitate you, even if they don't understand what they're imitating. This is why Machiavelli wrote for those who sought power, not pity, because pity ends when the mood changes. But power, real, silent, indifferent power stays. When you accept no one cares, you no longer depend on the emotional weather of others. You stop asking for shelter and build a kingdom out of stone. And from that kingdom, you look out not with hatred, but with clarity. You do not need revenge on those who ignored you. You thank them because their silence helped you find yours. And in your silence, you found yourself. Once you've crossed that invisible line, once you've truly accepted that no one cares, you enter a state few ever reach. The world becomes quieter. Not because there's less noise, but because you've stopped listening for applause. You've stopped scanning faces for signs of understanding. You've stopped editing your behavior to win affection. And in that silence, you begin to hear something else. Your own mind unfiltered, unchained, and sharper than it has ever been. Because you're no longer performing. You're building. This is when the transformation becomes irreversible. You stop waking up with the question, will they care today? Instead, you wake up with one question. What must be done? You begin to treat your suffering the way a sculptor treats stone. Not something to be shown, but something to be carved. Every betrayal, every failure, every moment of invisibility becomes material. You don't cry over it. You chisel it. Because the man who accepts that no one cares stops wishing for a better world and starts forging one in his image. And here's the part most people will never understand. Once you stop needing the world, you start commanding it. That sounds paradoxical, but it's brutally real. Dependence repels power. Independence attracts it. When people sense that you are emotionally self-sufficient, they shift. Their tone changes. Their posture adjusts. They begin to measure their words around you, not because you're loud, but because your silence isn't. Desperate, it's composed. It's dangerous. It means you are not bargaining for approval. It means you're operating on your own terms. And people fear those terms, even if they admire them. Look at the strongest figures in history, whether rulers, thinkers, warriors, or builders. The common thread wasn't that they were loved, it's that they didn't need to be. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while losing children, enduring illness, and facing betrayals that would have broken most men. Did he collapse into public despair? Did he campaign for sympathy? No. He wrote to himself in silence. He reminded himself daily, no one is coming to save you. Be your own fortress. That is Stoic reality. And it is Machiavellian too. Not because it is cold, but because it is effective. Niccolò Machiavelli knew that a man who expects care from the masses is already conquered. Why? Because the masses are fickle. Today they chant your name. Tomorrow they demand your head. If your power depends on their affection, then your power is borrowed. But if your power comes from your indifference to their affection, if you lead whether they cheer or jeer, then you are untouchable. And that's the only kind of power worth having. Not popularity, not applause, not validation, command. So, when you feel abandoned, ignored, or misunderstood, you are standing at a crossroads. One path leads to resentment, the other leads to greatness. Most choose resentment. They sulk, they retreat. They become bitter that the world isn't fair, that no one saw their value. They waste years in that fog. But the Machiavellian path is different. You see the same truth that no one cares, and instead of mourning it, you make it your foundation. You stop expecting the world to be fair. You start becoming something that cannot be ignored. That shift begins with how you speak. Weak men complain about being overlooked. Strong men let results speak for them. You will never hear the powerful explain themselves unnecessarily. Why? Because they understand that attention given too freely is charity, and charity cheapens value. If someone doesn't recognize your worth, you do not convince them. You make yourself so rare, so effective, so dominant in your lane that they are forced to notice. Not because you asked for it, but because their survival now depends on your presence. That is the difference between a man who begs for care and a man who commands consequence. When you stop expecting care, you stop giving out pieces of yourself for free. You stop bleeding emotionally into every room you enter. You stop announcing your wounds, hoping someone will rescue you. And instead, you begin to weaponize your pain. You turn heartbreak into discipline. You turn rejection into direction. You turn being ignored into becoming undeniable. Because once you realize that no one is coming, you become the one who arrives. People will sense this shift, and it will make them uncomfortable. Not because you're aggressive, but because you're complete. Most people are walking open wounds, constantly leaking emotions and seeking someone to patch them up. When they meet someone who doesn't leak, who doesn't beg, who doesn't explain, they're thrown off. You are not like them. You are not here to be saved. You are here to take what you came for. That energy, that cold clarity is what makes you powerful. It's the same clarity that builds empires, the same clarity that outlasts betrayal, the same clarity that doesn't blink when old allies turn cold. Because when you've accepted that care is not guaranteed, you stop measuring people by how they make you feel and start measuring them by how they move. When no one's watching, that's where loyalty reveals itself. That's where strategy begins. You start seeing who deserves a seat at your table, not based on how they treat you when you're shining, but based on how they act when you're silent, when you've gone dark, when you've stopped giving. And that's another part of the Stoic Machiavellian shift. You become more selective. You Stop chasing connection. You start observing behavior. You watch who checks, and when there's nothing in it for them. You watch who disappears when you stop performing. You notice who speaks your name only when it's trending, and who still speaks it when it's whispered. You file it all away, not for revenge, but for clarity. Because power is not just about rising. It's about knowing who can stand beside you without dragging you down. And that knowledge only comes when you stop needing everyone to care. Eventually, your identity changes. You are no longer the one who was hurt or the one who was overlooked. That story dies. You become the one who made it. Anyway, and that story rewrites everything. It gives your past meaning. It gives your pain a purpose. And it gives your enemies a problem they can't solve. Because you didn't need a savior. You became something far more dangerous. A man who moves forward without applause, without permission, without needing to be understood. That's what scares them the most. Because most people believe they're strong until one claps, until no one checks in, until the room goes silent. Then they shrink. But the one who thrives in that silence, the one who keeps going, not despite the indifference, but because of it, that man becomes myth. He becomes the story, whispered in corners. How did he survive that? How did he rise from that? Why? Didn't he break? And the answer is always the same. Because he stopped expecting anyone to care. And from that moment forward, he never waited again. He didn't become cold. He became calculated. He didn't become bitter. He became better. He didn't stop feeling. He stopped needing. And that shift turned him into a threat. Because when a man no longer seeks care, he stops being a burden. He stops being predictable. He stops being controlled. He becomes the one who others depend on, and the one who can walk away from anything without begging. That is when you win quietly, permanently, irreversibly, and all it takes is accepting that no one owes you a single drop of care. Not the world, not your friends, not even fate. You either build yourself from nothing or let the silence bury you. And for the Machiavellian mind, there's only ever one choice. At this stage, something fundamental happens inside. You, the craving for validation, is replaced with the hunger for control. You're no longer in the business of being seen. You're in the business of becoming undeniable, and not in the loud, theatrical way people try to force attention, but in the quiet, strategic way Machiavelli understood best. When you stop expecting anyone to care, you stop playing by their emotional rules. You stop asking permission to exist, and instead you start reshaping reality around your movement. One decision at a time, one silence at a time, one refusal to flinch at a time. You become a sovereign territory, no longer emotionally colonized by others, no longer waiting for the external world to assign value to you. You define your own value not because it feels good, but because it's the only way to survive. With power, this shift turns your psychology into a fortress. You don't just become harder to manipulate. You become impossible to move unless you've already decided to move. People don't understand how rare that is. Most walk around governed by unseen forces, the need to be loved, the fear of being abandoned, the aching hope that someone will finally notice them. And these invisible strings tug on every choice they make. It's why they fold under pressure. It's why they betray their purpose for short-term affection. It's why they become pawns in games they don't even realize they're playing. But when you've accepted deeply without illusion that no one cares, you cut those strings. You act without needing applause. You walk away without needing closure. You work in silence and expect nothing in return but your own satisfaction. And that kind of psychological sovereignty terrifies people because it means they can't guilt you. They can't tempt you. They can't threaten you with withdrawal of love, attention, or support because you've already buried the part of you that depended on those things. Now your movements become leaner, cleaner. No more wasted effort explaining yourself. To those who don't listen, no more exhausting emotional transactions with people who will never understand what drives you. No more begging for trust. You don't ask for trust. You prove yourself. and those who don't see it are left behind. This is not cruelty, it's precision, strategic abandonment of all dead weight, because now your mission matters more than your feelings, and that's a critical turn in your journey. Your purpose stops being emotional. It becomes strategic. You don't work just to be fulfilled. You work to conquer. You don't improve just to feel better. You improve to dominate. You don't rise just to be admired. You rise to become essential. That mindset is the difference between the weak and the world shaping. The weak want to be held. The powerful want to be irreplaceable. And when no one cares, the only path forward is to make yourself so competent, so unshakable, so dangerous, to ignore that even the indifferent must adjust themselves around your presence. You stop living for sympathy. You start living for leverage. And here's the most twisted, powerful part of it all. Once you no longer need people to care about, people start to care. Not because they've changed, but because you have. Your detachment becomes gravity. Your silence becomes status. Your refusal to chase makes others chase. Because most people are repelled by neediness but drawn to indifference, especially when that indifference is earned, not faked. And make no mistake, there is a difference. Fake indifference is loud, it tries too hard, it pretends not to care while constantly peeking to see if anyone noticed. Real indifference is invisible. It doesn't pretend, it doesn't signal, it just moves forward, with or without the audience. And when you carry yourself like that, people start to wonder, what does he know that I don't? Why is he so sure of himself? What did he go through to become like this? They sense that you've seen things, that you've suffered in silence, that you've learned to walk through hell without writing poetry about the flames. And whether they love you or fear you, they cannot ignore you. That is the exact power Machiavelli respected. The kind that doesn't ask for a throne, but makes people nervous when you enter the room because they feel they might be in the presence of something unbreakable. That's what no one cares really unlocks. Not bitterness, but backbone. You stop crying over what people fail to give you and start weaponizing what they never could take from you. Your dignity, your focus, your momentum. And once those things belong only to you, your power compounds quietly, daily, relentlessly. You stop talking about your moves. You start making them. You stop explaining your standards. You start enforcing them. You stop waiting for the right moment. You become the moment. And still, no one will clap. Not at first, not when you need it. But now, that doesn't matter. You've built your machinery without applause. You've suffered without sympathy. And that makes you terrifyingly efficient. Because the ones who succeed without support are the ones who never fall apart when the support vanishes later. That's the secret no one talks about. The world gives applause only after you've proven you no longer need it. And the people who never stop depending on it, they're the ones who collapse the moment the cheers go silent. You won't. You've already lived in silence. You've built in shadows. You've starved your need to be loved. And in that starvation, you found your power. So, now, when the world finally turns to you, when they finally ask how you survived, you won't need to explain. They'll see it in your eyes. The quiet storm, the refusal to die, the calm that only comes from walking through the fire, alone. Because the truth is simple. Once you accept no one cares, you stop needing rescue. You become the storm they thought would break you. And now, you are the one that breaks them. By the time you've reached this level of detachment, you're no longer driven by hope. You're driven by inevitability. You don't hope to be seen. You don't hope to be loved. You don't hope to be chosen. All of that was burned out of you in the furnace of silence. And what emerged wasn't a man hoping to be part of the world. It was a man building one in his image. A man who doesn't flinch when he's alone because he's walked so long without applause that now the silence sounds like home. This is where the Machiavellian mind eclipses the emotional mind completely. Most people are still negotiating with reality. They're trying to get the world to care, trying to get life to reward them for being good. being kind, being loyal. But the world doesn't reward emotion. It rewards effectiveness. And when you finally abandon the delusion that being cared for is a guarantee, you stop negotiating. You start operating. It's a different energy entirely. Now your actions don't wobble under pressure. Now, your ambition doesn't bend to loneliness. Now your path isn't altered by rejection. You are no longer playing a game with others. You are building a game that others are forced to play. And the fewer people you expect to care, the more dangerous you become. Because now you're not slowed down by the emotional bureaucracy that governs most lies. You don't stop to explain. You don't pause to reassure. You don't hold hands. Through their discomfort, you move. And the world is either forced to catch up or collapse in your absence. You become what they call emotionless. But it's not emotionlessness. It's refinement, precision. You still feel, but you feel in solitude. And you use those feelings not to complain, but to engineer, to plan, to punish, to build something no one can take from you again. Because you've learned the most brutal, beautiful truth Machiavelli ever hinted at. You cannot make people care. You can only make them comply. That is the real divide. The weak want emotional justice. The powerful want results. And the sooner you accept that emotional justice is a myth, the faster you gain real control over your life. Not everyone will support you. Not everyone will understand you. Not everyone will care. So what? What does their care build? What does their understanding protect? What does their sympathy do when you're bleeding out at the top of the mountain? Nothing. It sounds harsh because it is. But harshness isn't cruelty. It's honesty. The world doesn't run on feelings. It runs on power. And the first form of power is mastery over your own mind. Once you accept that care is a currency, you cannot force others to time equals sign 0.6s. Spend, you stop begging for it. You build wealth in other ways, quiet power, ruthless patience, relentless self-discipline, and above all, emotional solitude. Solitude is your forge now. Solitude is your compass. Solitude is your sanctuary. Because in that solitude, you're no longer distracted by the need to be seen. And finally, you can see clearly. You see who is using you, who is testing your boundaries, who only cares when you're useful, who applauds only when the crowd applauds first. And that vision, that clarity, that's the sword Machiavelli was sharpening all along. Once you accept no one cares, you stop romanticizing loyalty from strangers. You stop feeling betrayed when people fall silent. You stop waiting for people to reach out. Instead, you turn inward, not to hide, but to sharpen. And from that sharpening comes something no one expects from the quiet man in the corner: dominance. Because when the crowd sees someone who doesn't flinch, doesn't explain, and doesn't depend, they start to orbit. They lean in. They get curious. And suddenly, the same world that once ignored you starts to whisper your name. He never begged. He never complained. He never crumbled. And now that you're unshakable, they offer the very care they once withheld. But by then, you don't need it. You already built without it. You already bled without it. You already became everything you needed to become in the dark. This is the Machiavellian truth. People only care once you prove you don't need them to. And even then, their care is a byproduct, not a requirement. You move with or without it. You win with or without it. You survive with or without it. And once people realize that you've already made peace with being alone, they stop seeing you as vulnerable. They start seeing you as inevitable. And in this world, inevitable is the only identity worth having. Now, when someone ignores you, it doesn't shake you. It reveals them. When someone withdraws their support, it doesn't destroy you. It exposes their limits. When someone tries to punish you with silence, you welcome it. It's where you live. This is how you break the cycle of emotional slavery. You stop interpreting apathy as loss and start interpreting it as training. Every time. Someone didn't care, they made you sharper. Every time someone didn't show up, they gave you time to build alone. Every time the world stayed silent, it pushed you deeper into the only voice that matters, your own. And now you don't flinch, you don't ask, you don't explain, you enforce your boundaries. Our law, your movement is quiet, your standards are non-negotiable. And the ones who didn't care, they'll care soon enough when they realize they don't have access to the man who doesn't need them. Because when you accept no one cares, you take back your power. When you take back your power, you stop waiting. And when you stop waiting, you become the one they wait for, and you never go.